Welcome to Movie Oubliette, the film review podcast for movies that most people have mercifully forgotten.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Conrad, and in each episode, we drag a forsaken film out of the oubliette,
Discuss it and judge it to decide whether it should be set free
or whether it should be thrown back and consigned to oblivion forever. We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the Movie Oubliette.
Greetings, listeners, and welcome to Movie Oubliette, episode 155, the hemisphere-spanning podcast with me, Dan, learning furiously about houseplants here in Melbourne, Australia.
And me, Conrad, recovering from watching Longlegs in Cambridge, UK.
Oh, I've heard about that movie. In this podcast, we discuss forgotten genre films, horror, sci-fi, and fantasy, because in the dystopian future, we don't want to have feelings. Right, Conrad?
No. They're too bothersome.
We don't want to feel things.
No.
So how was Longlegs?
Well, speaking of feeling things, gosh, that's a disturbing movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw the sort of trailer teasers that they were putting out, and brilliant marketing.
Yeah, it's a really stylish trailer. It's film directed by Osgood Perkins, who's quite the auteur, I think.
But I like the trailers because they were really short, like 5-second, 10-second trailers, and not showing much at all. Like, that's great marketing. Like, I remember back in the 90s, even like the movie The Matrix, they used to have these giant billboards that just all it said on the billboard was, "What is the Matrix?" And it got this kind of like a hubbub about like, what is this? What is this movie? Is it a movie? It's like people didn't even know what it was. That's great marketing for this the movie Longlegs.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you get the sense that it's a thriller for sure, possibly a horror, but you didn't really know what the story was. But essentially, it's a serial killer thriller, but with a supernatural twist. And Nick Cage is fucking terrifying.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm definitely going to check it out. So, anything in the mailbag today? What have our listeners been saying?
Chazilla got in touch about Shallow Grave and said, this movie couldn't be any more 90s if it tried. The clothes, the hair, the cynicism, the humour. I love it when you guys exhume these shallowly buried gems. Laughed my arse off when Juliet took off with a ringer. At least it wasn't full of Walter's dirty undies. The whites. If I'm ever reincarnated, my one wish would be to come back with Ewan McGregor's hair.
Yeah, it's good hair, right?
It's pretty impressive. Huge mane. I don't think I've ever seen him with hair that long in another movie.
No.
Thanks, Chazilla.
Yes.
Loved hearing from you. And, of course, we heard from Serge of Cold Crash Pictures. Hello, Serge.
Hello, Serge.
And he said, I had no clue what to make of Shallow Grave when I first saw it back in 2012. But after a dozen years in the workforce, I'm like, no, capitalism will absolutely turn you into an expert at nothing but hustling and cruelty.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of true.
He says, Movie Oubliette's mileage, or brackets, kilometerage, seems to have varied when they reviewed it on their latest podcast, but I find it quite enjoyable. I love movies about despicable people doing terrible things and then making the audience wonder if they're going to get away with it.
Yeah, me too.
And just to clear that up for you, Serge, it's all miles in the UK. Is it miles in Australia and New Zealand?
No, definitely not. It's all the metric system here. What really surprises me when I was in the UK and being in the car with Google Maps, narrating where to go, it's preposterous. Like when it's like in 406 feet, turn left. Like, who knows how long that is? That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous.
It's really weird in this country because I don't know whether, Gen Z has moved on, but certainly for my generation, we just seem to have both in our heads.
Yeah.
So we're using centimeters when we're doing some things, and then we switch to imperial for miles. I don't know. It's really weird.
Yeah.
We do both.
Yeah. I remember going to the supermarket and fruit would be in kilograms, right? But then you would weigh yourself in what, stone?
Stone and pounds.
Yeah. What's up with that?
I don't know. We're very strange. I think we're just sort of transitional, but it's still all the road signs, everything's in miles.
It's really confusing. It's just,
Very
it's so much
confusing.
easier with meters and kilometers.
We're strange. But our listeners aren't strange. They're fascinating, wonderful people. Thank you for writing to us.
Thank you.
So, Dan, what will we be doing today?
Ooh, well, I'll go get it now. I'm in some sort of quaint little hidden room back here.
Oh, what's in it?
Oh, all sorts of stuff like art and this snow globe.
Oh,
There's a record player. Maybe I'll put on some music.
ooh, fancy.
Oh, and is that the Mona Lisa in the corner? Oh, here's a movie on the table.
Of course.
Well, you really should learn to knock.
Okay, I'm back.
Ooh, what did you bring back with you this time?
Well, today we will be discussing a 2002 sci-fi action movie that was actually chosen by one of our patrons. It is the movie Equilibrium.
Yeah, chosen by Film Aficionado.
Yes, so I have seen this movie. I'm not sure whether you had, Conrad, but it's written and directed by Kurt Wimmer, starring Christian Bale, Sean Bean, Sean Pertwee, Angus McFadden, Taye Diggs, Emily Watson, and William Fichtner or Feichtner. How do you pronounce his last name?
I've always said Fichtner, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, okay. He's one of those actors I see everywhere, but I never can remember his name.
Yeah, same. Okay, and what happens in this movie?
Well, following the utter destruction caused by World War III, the city-state of Libya has abolished human emotions with all forms of expression, art, music, literature to be incinerated.
Oh.
To repress emotions completely, the populace must inject the drug prosium, scheduled throughout the day citywide. Leading Libya is the father, head of the governing Tetragrammaton Council. Its police force are the Grammaton clerics. The top-ranked cleric being our main character, John Preston. But when his trusted partner, Partridge, is revealed to be feeling emotions, a sense offender, Preston starts questioning the supposed dangers of human emotions. His doubts increase when he stops taking the drug prosium, meets the mysterious Mary, and later even rendezvous with the underground Sense Rebellion. But will his new cleric partner, Brand, discover his newfound ability to feel? Will Preston save Mary from being burnt like a sense witch? Will I stop laughing every time they say sense offender because it sounds like a sex offender? We'll find out. We will find out after the break.
We will.
We are back to talk about Equilibrium, chosen by our patron, Film Aficionado. Had you seen this movie, Conrad, in 2002?
No, I wasn't even that aware of it. The sense I had was it was a rip-off of The Matrix.
Right.
And the sort of people that talked about it were people that I didn't really get on with. So I thought, well, I'm not going to like this movie.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I remember watching it. I think one of my friends who was a film student, she played it to me. And yeah, the first thing you think of is The Matrix.
Yeah.
There are some scenes that feel like they've just been taken from The Matrix. Like the pillar fight scene with all the guns in that sort of big hallway feels very much like the lobby scene in The Matrix, where they're flipping through pillars and all sorts of shooting and stuff like that. The fighting is so stylized. Like it could not come from any other decade but the early 2000s or late 90s. Like it is very much like Blade and The Matrix and Resident Evil and Underworld. It's got that really almost dance-like quality to the fight scenes. Like everything is just perfectly landing. It's like a choreographed dance. And also our main character, Preston, he just never gets a scratch on. Well, he does get one scratch, I think.
Yeah.
But he never gets hurt. He's just invincible.
Yes, it's very much of its era. Although the director, Kurt Wimmer, rejects the comparisons with The Matrix.
Really?
Yeah, in fact, he
Wow.
points towards the Matrix sequels and the settings for the sequels, fighting in an ornate room rather than sort of a industrial, sort of slicked corporate looking lobby. He thinks that the Matrix sequels ripped off Equilibrium. I suspect he doesn't explicitly say that, but he claims that it's possibly the other way around in terms of influence. And instead, he was looking much more towards the historical depictions of dystopian futures and authoritarian societies and people resisting them, and a hero that breaks the whole thing down for everybody and saves the society. So he was looking at things like Metropolis in 1984, Alphaville, the French New Wave film from 65, Fahrenheit 451,
Yep.
THX 1138. So he's thinking of those as sort of springboards for a very particular fantasy that he wanted to tell.
Yeah, I mean, the two movies that came to mind in terms of like setting and plot and premise were definitely 1984, George Orwell, and Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, especially Fahrenheit 451, because in that movie, books are banned and the books are burnt.
Yes.
And it felt very similar. And I mean, they're incinerating art and books and anything that has expression or any creativity or anything related to feeling.
Yeah.
And it did almost feel like it was those two books together into this movie.
Yeah, no, I made the connection immediately because the opening scene, sort of to give you an action scene and to see John Preston and Sean Bean doing their day job. So they're these clerics, instead of the thought police, they're the sense police. They're out there cracking down. I mean, I do question the whole premise of needing a new police force to have slicked back hair, long black coats, 2 handguns and ninja reflexes to deal with people who feel something on a Thursday afternoon. But anyway, they raid an illegal classical Renaissance painting den in the opening scene.
Yeah.
Which, makes a change from drugs or something, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But then they burn the Mona Lisa
Yes.
and you hear screaming on the soundtrack.
Yeah.
So I immediately thought of Fahrenheit 451.
Yes, that scene, apparently the actor that they show first as sort of the ringleader of this illegal art organization or whatever.
Yeah, it's sort of an underground Sotheby's.
Yeah, exactly. So that actor is Dominic Purcell. He's Australian, and apparently the director Kurt Wimmer wanted him to be the lead. He wanted him to read for the lead, but the studios were like, "Wow, who's this guy? Like, he's unknown." But then he became incredibly famous with Prison Break because he's one of the sort of 2 leads in Prison Break. But he was also in Blade 3 and DC's Legends of Tomorrow. So become a much more famous actor now. But yeah, I did like the premise. Like, I mean, this whole dystopian future thing, totalitarian government, it kind of does speak to me. I enjoyed 1984 when I read it. This also kind of reminded me a little bit of Brazil as well, which I really like. And it kind of almost has this retro futuristic look as well to the city. You've got blimps in the background. Everything's almost sepia toned, but not quite. It has this, like not steampunk, but retro future where it's almost like what the future looks like to people from the 50s, which was kind of interesting. Like it's almost got like corporate attire. I mean, like, I guess Soviet attire.
Yeah. And religious too.
And religious. Yeah. With a leader that is pretty much like, almost like a religious cult leader. I saw recently some footage come from North Korea, and it kind of reminded me of scenes from this movie where everyone's dressed exactly the same. Everyone's adhering to all the laws and not showing any form of creativity or expression or anything. Everything is just monochrome.
And I think the film benefited greatly from where they shot the movie, which is in what was East Berlin and East Germany.
Right.
Around about the time. So it's after the wall had come down, obviously, because that was in the early 90s. But there still hadn't been an awful lot of investment and redevelopment yet. So they are filming in a lot of brutalist Nazi architecture. So it's a lot of sharp angles and massive edifices, you know, showing strength and might and power. And it's all concrete and grey and brutal looking. So they got an enormous amount of production value for very little.
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, the visual look of this movie is pretty impressive considering how small the budget was. I think it was only like 20 million.
Yeah.
It's tiny for this type of movie. There are some scenes where they've tried to spruce it up a bit with CGI, and of course, 2002 CGI, not the best CGI at times.
No, it's not.
Some of the sort of green screen effects are not great. Like it's almost TV movie looking, flat and very digital. But for the most part, yeah, I think the director in the commentary was quite innovative with how he shot a bunch of the scenes to make them look much more impressive than they actually were, especially all the fight scenes, which he claims there was no wire work, which is incredible because I swear it looks like wire work.
Yeah, loads of people think that there are, just like, same era, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, that it's a lot of sort of graceful, beautiful wire work that's going on.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Credit to him, there aren't any really cheesy slow-mo scenes, which you would expect from a movie like this.
No, there is one.
Is there?
Yeah, there's the scene where John sort of starts fighting his own.
Oh, yes, that's right. With the guns as hammers. They have the guns retract these kind of, I don't even know what you call them, like nails or...
I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
John lets a bunch of feelers escape and fights the same 6 police guys for about a minute and a half, including a period of step-printed slow motion where they didn't shoot it in slow-mo and they've tried to make it slow-mo in post.
Yeah.
With stirring music from Klaus Badelt underneath it. But... yeah, it goes on a bit.
I felt like it could have been cut in half because the first half of it is, the fake slow-mo and it's cheesy. And also there's no damage as well. So he's hitting all these guys and they're kind of groaning and but you don't see anything smash. And then the second half of that scene, then he starts smashing helmets and like really doing damage. And I think the second half works. The first half, not so much.
No, you're right.
I heard in the commentary, though, the director said that whole scene only took 30 minutes to film.
That's right. Yeah, he didn't have time to do lots of setups.
Yeah.
And he credits Christian Bale with this because Christian, I think he is known, kind of like Keanu, actually, for his dedication to physically perfecting a role, being in great shape for a particular role.
Yeah.
And Christian was coming off of American Psycho, so he was in great shape. I don't know if you remember the opening getting ready for work scene in American Psycho. He's in prime condition. And apparently he did not need a lot of takes to get a lot of this physical choreography right. He was first time on all of it, so it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, so that scene that we were talking about, I think they did 5 takes and then they had enough to cut together that whole scene. Yeah. And the director said that normally a scene like that would take a whole day.
Easily.
But 30 minutes.
Yeah.
In and out.
I think Christian Bale's a good choice for this character. He is very good at portraying people who are slightly sociopathic and devoid of emotion on the one hand, and then incredibly committed to a cause on the other hand. He's quite good at that. Thus, he was cast as Batman shortly afterwards for Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
It suits him quite well coming from American Psycho.
I would debate that, actually. I think he's kind of miscast because he does do the cold-hearted, emotionless, like, psychopath really well. And also, it worked for Batman because obviously Batman's emotionless, but also Bruce Wayne's a bit of an asshole. He's supposed to be, arrogant and this rich guy. It's his character that he hides behind as a civilian. So I don't know whether he does the warmth that well.
No.
Like when he starts feeling things and he stops taking the drug Prosium, which represses the emotions, he starts feeling things. I don't know. It felt a little forced. I didn't feel like Christian Bale is a very warm guy in general.
No, and certainly if you read news articles about him, I think he's a problematic person, I think. I mean, there have been instances of him screaming at crew on set that were recorded and leaked, and I think there was an allegation of him abusing members of his family at one point. But I don't know whether they bore out, but certainly it was reported that he was physically abusive.
Right.
Don't know.
Yeah. So I don't know whether he was cast that well when he becomes this feeling, emotionful person.
No, that's a fair point, I think, yeah. He is much better at playing a sociopath than he is at playing a romantic lead.
Yeah.
But that's one thing that this film does not have. Even though you have Emily Watson as this sense offender,
Yes.
to use that questionable phrase.
I have to say,
Yeah.
throughout the movie, when I was watching it with my wife, every time they said sex offender, it literally sounded like they were saying sex offender. And so they're going around screaming like, sex offender! You're a sex offender. And I was just like, oh my God, it's too much. It's too much.
Well, at least the police brutality would make a little bit more sense if they were sex offenders.
Yeah.
But,
sorry, Emily Watson.
Emily Watson. Yeah, no, this film is quite bloodless in terms of passion. There's no romance in this movie, really.
No.
I mean, you've got Emily Watson, who is a sort of a resistance fighter, a sense offender, who is arrested. And I think she is used as a catalyst for his awakening and his turning against the principles that rule his life and starts questioning things because she's caught and she is, spoilers, executed. And I think she reminds him visually and just in terms of what's happening to her of his wife, because his wife was dragged away for feeling something and burnt to a crisp. But although the scenes where he's in an interrogation room with Emily Watson as he starts feeling things because he's not taking his drugs, they do become a little bit more, intimate maybe. Or there's a frisson of something there. There isn't really any romance in this movie.
Yeah.
I do like, by the way, just as an aside, that even though she's in prison, they do let Emily Watson have some lipstick and a nice dress, which is really kind of them.
Yeah, that's true. I was surprised as well because I thought, okay, here's the love interest. But then you also find out that she had a relation with Partridge, so Preston's former partner, Sean Bean, that is reported to be a sense offender and is executed by Preston, which is a stunning scene, by the way. I'll talk about it in the movies. And I feel like that is more the catalyst because he trusts his partner so much, but then he finds out that he is feeling things and it kind of starts the doubt in him of maybe feelings are good. Like maybe I should feel things. And then finding out that Mary was with Partridge. But yeah, I did think, is this going to be a new love interest? Is he going to steal his partner's girlfriend? But it didn't happen. And I was surprised that she does get executed and he does not save her. This movie is pretty bleak. It's pretty depressing for like 90% of the movie.
Yeah. Apparently in the original script, she was supposed to survive and come back at the end.
Right.
But the director said that he decided against it because if she did, it would be a betrayal of her main function in the movie, which is to inspire Christian Bale's character, John Preston, to bring down the whole government and destroy Father.
Yeah.
She had to be martyred. She had to die in order for him to do what he did.
Yeah.
And I think he's right. I think he's absolutely right. But it's a brave choice.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's incredibly heart-wrenching, that scene. And it's kind of set up almost like a witch burning as well, which is interesting.
That's a good comparison. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, because she almost looks like it. She's got like this hood on, and I did like how when Preston is watching the footage of his wife getting let off and watching himself before, when he was still under the drug control of repressed emotions, and seeing a completely different person in himself when his wife is being led away. And so he tries to change that.
Yeah.
But yeah, heart-wrenching scene. Sean Bean does live up to his reputation as always getting killed in every movie he's ever been in.
Yeah, he dies in 18 minutes in this movie, which I don't know, is that a record for him? It's pretty good.
It's like, Sean Bean, you can't catch a break. Can you live through any of his roles?
I know.
Any of them.
In this case, it was kind of built into the role because they knew they needed somebody with the gravitas to pull off this role and to have an impact on the audience. But when he was shopping around, the director looking for an actor to play this part, not many people were interested because it's like, I'm not in much of the story, am I? Why am I bothering? So Sean Bean obviously is just a sucker for this kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, he's amazing despite how small his role was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like you said, it does have gravitas. He does really affect the character and does pull off that moment as being very pivotal in the movie.
It plants a seed that I think John's interactions with Mary then fertilize and develop and grow, because it's their conversations that I think really help shape his thinking.
Yeah. Good to see Sean Pertwee again. We just saw him in Dog Soldiers. He's back again as the father.
Yeah, sort of the Wizard of Oz, but in a glass cage, just giving speeches and appearing in the background, saying things about how it would be much better if the world is the same all the time, so that you can go into each moment with the confidence that it's been lived before. He's like this Zen guru of boringness. It's really interesting.
Very similar to the sort of Big Brother in 1984. But then the twist, DuPont, he's like a cleric officer or captain or something.
Yeah.
The head of the police. Big twist here. He turns out to be the father all along.
Yeah, he's the leader. The leader's died a long time ago.
Yeah.
So there's nothing behind the curtain.
Yeah.
But I think that was always the same with Big Brother too. Big Brother doesn't actually exist. It's a construct. It's an idea. I think at one point DuPont does say something about the message itself isn't important. It's our adherence to it. It doesn't matter. You've just got to have blind faith and stick to this regime no matter what.
Yeah. I thought the actor played that character quite well. So hang on, what's his name? Angus McFadden. He plays a character that you really love to hate.
Yeah, I'm not sure he convinces as much in the fighting scenes.
Yeah, he looks like he's struggling to keep up with Christian Bale.
He really does. He's not that formidable, which is a shame because John also has like a climactic scene with his partner Brant, Taye Diggs, who they have a really good sort of sparring partnership throughout. Clearly his partner wants to, get promoted above him and so on, take over. He's really ambitious.
Yeah.
And they fight quite a few times. They have that fantastic kendo scene, which has lots of exposition in it, which is quite clever because it gets across the antagonistic nature of their relationship through the supposedly just physical training.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to their climactic battle, it lasts like 3 seconds and then he slices his face off.
Yeah. It's very quick. I mean, it's almost like, I think the director was trying to subvert expectations. You expect a big fight at the end and it's just over in like 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Because Christian Bale's character is just that good. He is invincible. He slices through everyone. He never gets a scratch. He never gets shot ever. There's endless bullets, infinite bullets in the movie. Like every handgun is an automatic rifle that shoots so many bullets. And none of them hit Preston.
Of course not.
What did you think about the fight scenes? I know they're ridiculous and stylized. I like them for their beauty, but I didn't like the fact that Preston doesn't get a scratch because there were no stakes. It's like a Steven Seagal movie. I don't ever feel like he's in danger because he never gets hurt.
No, which is kind of what they built up to in The Matrix with Neo, is that it was kind of fun at the end when he realized that he could be invincible, and then it was satisfying to see him develop.
Yeah.
But Preston's just great.
He's great from the start of the movie to the end of the movie. There's no development with his fighting. He is just perfect 10 the whole way through. Yeah, Neo, there is a evolution. Like, he doesn't even know how to fight at the start of the movie. He gets the download or whatever. He knows kung fu. And then he does get, like, beaten to shit by Mr. Smith at many points during the movie. Like, he is not at the same caliber as the agents. And then, there is the climax of him being amazing at the end. Whereas this, there is no climax.
No.
It's the same in every scene. He just wins every time.
He's perfect in every way.
There's no stakes. So there's almost no tension in any of the fight scenes.
No, and I have to say, I found them ridiculous.
They are.
The whole idea of this gun Carter, which Kurt Wimmer, the director, credits with making up himself as a teenager in his garden with his gun.
Right.
It's kind of the human version of the Last Starfighter's Death Blossom secret weapon on the spaceship, where you just lure your enemies to surround you and then you kill them at close range whilst windmilling your arms randomly and firing a gun. But it's supposed to be this scientific calculation of every single gunfight that has resulted in this perfect combination of movements and angles. I'm sure it was very carefully choreographed and was executed brilliantly. But it just looks like he's waving his arms everywhere and gunshots are going off.
Yeah.
I just laughed. I thought, I'm sure a 15-year-old boy looks at this and thinks this is great, but I was pissing myself every time it happened.
I mean, I was as well, but I still was impressed. It still looks good. I don't know. Like, it's incredibly stylized and silly, but it does. I don't know. I still think it looks good. It looks strange though. It's a strange way of fighting because you're shooting, but it's kind of they've mixed like Tai Chi in with the movement, so it's kind of like very quick movements and shooting everywhere as well. It's almost like he's just got his eyes closed and he's just like waving his arms around.
I know.
It's strange, I have to say. It is very strange.
I couldn't make the leap into cool. I just thought it looked dumb. The action scene where he's running through that hall, and I think it finishes with him doing a backflip after he's like kicked a gun, like a skateboard flip, and the gun loops over him and then he catches it. I roared with laughter. I thought, this is inches, there's that imperial measurements again, it's just inches away from being Hot Fuzz parody of action movies. It's just so like dialed up to 11 ridiculous.
It is 100%. I don't think it's quite as high. There's another movie Kurt Wimmer directed that is it's 11 in terms of like stylized action, and that is Ultraviolet.
Even more than this, my goodness.
Even more, and there's so much CGI in that movie as well, and the color grade is it's astounding that they okayed it.
Oh god,
everyone is smoothed, so I don't think it's as bad as Ultraviolet, but it is ridiculous. But that's the 2000s though. If you watch Blade, the fight scenes are like this. Just absolutely bonkers. Like, these landing moves and impacts are just not possible. There's just no way. But even The Matrix, if you really watch The Matrix, the first one, or even the trilogy, the scenes are ridiculous. All the fight scenes are ridiculous, but that was the thing. That was the trend of the 2000s and late 90s.
But there is an in-universe reason why the fight scenes in The Matrix are ridiculous. That is not reality. It's depicted as not being reality, whereas this is a fantasy. It's an allegory. It's fun. It's a spectacle. It's entertainment. So it's not attempting to create sort of gritty Jason Bourne-like improvisational.
Not at all.
This is operatic, ridiculous spectacle of fight scenes. But I didn't find it impressive. And as well as that, I was so bothered by the gun fetishism in it. And when you get to the point where you're even hand fighting with guns and firing guns off next to people's heads whilst you're doing Pilates, honestly, it's just... I tired of it quite quickly.
I think there's a sort of a personal taste to this type of action.
Well, it speaks also to the director's tastes and leanings as well. I mean, he makes reference in the commentary that he does with his producer of them being at an NRA rally handing out leaflets for this movie.
Yeah.
So it probably appeals to that sort of mindset.
Yeah, yeah.
At one point in the commentary, the director also says, it's a fantasy, and from my point of view, action is how men express romance on film. They express their love by whipping ass.
I mean,
which I found troubling.
I kind of get it because I loved action movies growing up.
Yeah.
And I lived for this stuff. And probably when I watched it, I thought this was like the coolest thing ever. I get that it is problematic. Yes, we shouldn't express our feelings for violence, obviously.
No.
But I do get in terms of like cinema and watching cinema or even making cinema.
Yeah.
We like seeing action scenes. We like seeing fight scenes. We don't watch, Jean-Claude Van Damme movies for the dialogue.
No, of course. And I agree with you. I get what you're saying, and I love action movies too.
Yeah.
And I recognize that it's a story, it's a fantasy, it's an entertainment. But I guess the thing that I'm always thinking about is how we choose to represent masculinity in these stories and which stories we choose to tell. But yeah, this is one among many, and it's not particularly gratuitous.
I did notice there wasn't a lot of gore.
No.
Despite the casualties and the absolute bloodshed. Like, a lot of people die in this movie.
I saw an online tally. I think John kills over 130 people.
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
Yeah.
I also noted all the bad guys, they're all dressed the same and they all have motorcycle helmets on. So I'm sure it's the same stunt people in every scene.
Oh, yeah.
The same
I bet it
people.
is, yeah.
Because they could be anyone because they all dress exactly the same, which is like, that's cost cutting to a T right there.
Yeah, it's very cunning the way that he does it because he wants to have impact and spectacle, but he doesn't want to have gory, stomach churning, blood spraying effects all the time. So most of the squibs that are going off are just blowing up sort of powder, concrete or dust or something exploding everywhere. So you get the kineticism and the visual stimulation. And when he hits them, he sort of hits their visors. So, he's shooting them in the face, but it's the glass visor that explodes. So you're not seeing sort of blood and teeth flying everywhere.
Yeah.
But you still get the visual stimulus rather than actually seeing anything horrific that the MPAA or other censors might have had a problem with.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's clever.
Yeah, even when he slices Brand's face off. I mean, you do see his face slide off, but there's a close-up of the sword that he uses, and there's like one drop of blood.
I think that's pretty much the only drop of blood in the movie, isn't it?
Yeah, there's just like nothing. There's nothing. Yeah, the commentary does reveal a lot of really innovative filmmaking. So in the scene with Preston protecting the dog, and he's doing all these flips and gunfight and everything, I think they attached a strobe to the gun, and it's just a strobe light for that sort of gun flare effect, which is really such an interesting way of filming.
Yeah, and I think the squibs were tied to the gun going off so that they were perfectly synchronized every time he fired it, which, again, was an innovation at the time that hadn't really been done before.
Yeah,
it's like the very opening scene. I thought it was quite daring that when John goes into that room, it's in darkness, and the film is in darkness for like 10, 15 seconds and perfect silence. Yeah. That's a brave thing to do until the director whispers on the ADR track.
Can anyone see him? Where is he? I think he does mention on the commentary that a lot of people in cinemas thought there was something wrong with the projector. Yeah, and when I was watching it on DVD, I thought, did my DVD player stop working? Like, did it skip or something?
It's broke, yeah. Yeah, and then after that, I think there's a lot of strobe footage of him shooting everybody. But it's really weird. It looks like a first-person shooter of a 16-bit game because you just get these flash images of people as they slowly retreat backwards.
Yeah.
Aesthetically, it was odd. It was unusual. There's a lot of innovative stuff going on in there, for sure.
In terms of like using the budget and still maximizing the visual look.
Yeah.
Now it's time for Random Trivia.
So, Dan, what wonderful emotional piece of trivia did you find in your secret hideaway of bric-a-brac today?
Well, I'm sure you've heard this in the commentary, but in the scene where Preston saves the puppy, so they find this dog farm or something where these sense offenders have kept dogs for some reason. Why would you want to keep dogs? And there's this puppy.
Pets.
This puppy almost runs away, and Preston grabs it because they're now going to shoot all these dogs, which is diabolical. I have to say, the scene almost took me out of the movie. It's like, I'm turning it off right now. But Preston's got this puppy. So the sound of the puppy wasn't actually a dog because the director was really dissatisfied with the sound library of dog sounds. So they hired a woman whose skill set was to imitate dog sounds. And she was responsible for all the sort of characterizations of that puppy, which is amazing. Like, she sounds really good. She sounds like a dog.
She does. Yeah, although after I heard that and I watched the film again, I could kind of tell, but only because I'd been told. I could tell that it's a lady going, ooh.
I don't know. I think she's pretty amazing. It's very convincing.
Yeah, she is. And that's our trivia.
Yeah. So a movie about a world with no emotions, I felt like the movie was quite emotionless. Like, it was quite bland in many places in terms of dialogue and interactions with people.
Yeah, but at the same time, you've got this fundamental problem that if nobody feels anything, you have no drama.
Yeah.
If nobody is angry or has any ambition or drive or jealousy or hatred, you will have no drama. And it's clear that all of the people that are even dosed up to the eyeballs on Prosium still have all of those characteristics.
Yes. Yeah.
They're still bickering and sparring and pissing each other off and reacting with emotion. So it's this odd no man's land.
Well, I mean, I think that is the plot hole of the movie, though. If you have a world with no one has emotion, then you wouldn't have Brand trying to get his position as the head cleric. You wouldn't have the father / DuPont trying to infiltrate the rebellion. You wouldn't have anything. Like, everyone would just be neutral about everything.
Yeah, they would. And nobody would be compelled to better themselves. I mean, this is the fundamental flaw in the movie, is that it's pretty much a well-established fact amongst anthropologists that the reason that human beings have survived is because we cooperate with each other and we have empathy. If you take empathy away from people and they're just machines, I mean, how does a family even start? How did he have a wife and 2 kids?
Yeah, I was thinking
It
that
doesn't
as well.
work.
Like, how do you have sex when you feel nothing?
Yeah, I know. How do you have kids? How do you raise children when you don't care whether they live or die?
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Fundamentally, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it's just an allegory. It's a fantasy. And then you've got to
Accept it, yeah.
yeah, you accept it, and then you imagine, okay, well, what is he commenting on? What's the sort of underlying thematic drive of the movie? Because it's got to be beyond authoritarian equals bad, person overthrows government and causes complete social change, which that's basically what it is. But what is he trying to say? What is he fighting against? And I think in the commentary track, all that Kurt Wimmer reveals is that his personal motivation was his concern about, it's sort of the thought police, that expressing certain views or feelings or opinions about something is in some way rejected or suppressed by society. So, I mean, if you expanded it to now, you'd be talking about cancel culture. His sci-fi projecting things to their ultimate degree, speculative criticism, I guess you'd call it, is to imagine a society where you're not allowed to express anything at all. So your First Amendment rights are gone. You're just not allowed to feel anything about anything, which is ridiculous because that's not what social criticism of people's points of view is about. I mean, it's about protecting minorities, usually.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure it's built on a very sturdy foundation, frankly.
But I do...
Or not one I agree with anyway.
I mean, I do think there is a certain amount of truth to it. Like, I think that's why socialist and communist governments exist, because... And there is a lot of control and there is less crime, I guess, or I don't know, maybe not. But that sort of the idea of limiting people's expression, limiting people's ability to be better than other people does kind of neutralize everything.
Yeah.
And being able to control that population easier, I guess. It's theoretical. It doesn't really work in practice.
No.
I mean, it's inhumane, like you're limiting choice. But I think that sort of idea of what if that could happen? What if we could make everyone eat exactly the same food that they need to eat? That would be a lot healthier than people choosing the terrible food that they choose to eat. If we made everyone exercise the right amount, that would be a lot healthier rather than people choosing to go to the gym or not going to the gym. So there's that sort of idea of like, if you could control the population in terms of thought or feelings, it would be better for the population in terms of like living longer, being less crime. I don't know. I still think that the premise of the movie is interesting. Like, I'm still fascinated by it.
Yeah, it doesn't quite work because, as I say, if they really made people devoid of emotion, we wouldn't function at all. We'd probably all just die and let each other die. It wouldn't work.
Yeah, I think what you would need is you would have like levels. You would have like the main majority of people on Prosium, and then you would have to have levels of people not on Prosium to make decisions. Yeah, because I wasn't sure whether DuPont, the leader, was even on Prosium.
No. Well, he starts screaming his head off at the end of the movie, so it's fairly clear that he isn't. I think it's one of those situations where it's do as I say, not as I do. You know, I think you're right. There is a sense that, I mean, in any of these authoritarian regimes, you always end up with this oligarchy of extremely rich people for whom none of the rules apply anyway. And they're always living wonderful lives, and everybody else is just repressed by fear and violence. And that's the problem. You know, the premise of the movie is that this whole order has been imposed in order to prevent World War IV, but it's being so heavily policed. As Sean Bean's character says, what are we doing then? I mean, they're just exacting violence and fear on people all of the time.
Yeah.
It's a society that is constantly at war. So how is that any better? I mean, it's infinitely worse.
Yeah, but they don't know that because they're on Prosium.
No, this is true.
They're killing people ruthlessly without thought, and they don't feel anything from it. They don't know that they're killers and they're being awful people. Like, I guess that's better. I mean, I don't know.
Not really.
Yeah.
I think that's what Sean Bean's character's trying to point out. So if we've eliminated violence and war, what are we doing? Because it's all they're doing.
Yeah, that's
all
true.
day, every day.
Yeah.
It's brutalizing people.
Yeah. What did you think about the end? Because it's different to 1984. Well, 1984, it's a very bleak ending because he becomes part of the people again and he believes in everything. Do you think the film would have worked better if Preston got injected again and he just became a mindless citizen?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it ends with the overthrow of the authority figures.
It does,
doesn't it? Yeah. I mean, and obviously at the moment, the idea that you achieve social change through assassinating your leader is probably, not a great one.
Yeah.
But I mean, I wasn't expecting it to end any other way.
Okay. Because I thought for a moment that was going to end in a very like a sad ending.
Right.
Because at one point you think Preston has double-crossed Brand. So he swapped his gun. So they track the gun to the killing of these like police guys.
Yeah.
And it's actually Brand's gun because Preston had swapped his gun with Brand's gun. And you think, oh, he's going to get away with it. And then you see Brand later come back and say, actually, we planned this all along. This is our only way that we could infiltrate the rebellion by making you think that you're feeling again and going against the regime. But in fact, you're working for us. You're our mole or way into the rebellion.
Yeah. It's Total Recall, basically.
Yeah, I thought, oh shit, this is not going to end very well. But then he just slices everyone.
He wins anyway.
Yeah, because he's invincible.
It's exactly the same as Total Recall. It's the shock you're a triple agent without even knowing it ending.
Yeah.
No, I was a bit disappointed with that. I just thought, oh, really? You're doing that?
I don't know. I would have liked to see that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been an incredibly bleak movie if it ended like that way.
No, I agree with you. I think that would have been really, really sad.
Yeah. I guess we should talk about the score. So it's by our good friend Klaus Badelt, who we've seen score Solomon Kane. It's a lot of choral music. It does divulge into Matrix techno-y electronic music at one point, which is like, are you sure you're not influenced by the Matrix? I think you're mistaken. But yeah, for the most part, it's very almost religious sounding.
Yeah, and I thought the same, and also quite Soviet sounding. A lot of male voice choirs intoning things.
Yeah.
The imagery of the film is quite mixed because on the one side, the flag of the Tetragrammaton Authority looks like a swastika.
Yeah,
And they're surrounded by fascist brutalist architecture. So all of it is evoking very much a fascist authoritarian regime. And yet the police are called clerics, and it has a lot of religious iconography attached to it. And then the music sounds somewhere between communist and religious. I don't know. It's quite an odd mishmash of different authoritarian regimes that we're just putting in a big pot, I guess, to be unspecific.
Yeah.
But in terms of the music, I mean, it's very much the Hans Zimmer remote control factory churning out the same plastic orchestral stuff that they did for the entire decade, really, from Pirates of the Caribbean onwards. Because a lot of people think that Hans Zimmer did Pirates of the Caribbean. He didn't. It was Klaus Badelt. So all those themes that Hans is playing at his concerts, he didn't write them.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it's fine. I mean, it's very hastily composed. He got the gig when the previous composer's work was thrown out at the 11th hour. The whole thing is synthesized. It's all samples. The orchestra's very boxy and synthy and fake and plastic sounding.
It did come across as kind of TV movie a little bit, and also just a little bit too much of it. I felt like there was just like a score all throughout, and no moments where you could sort of let the dialogue breathe at all. It was just constant score and very moody, like very spoon feeding emotions and tone, which I hate.
Yeah. There are a couple of places where I thought it really worked, and I can talk about those in the moves, but particularly one thing I notice is where Preston faces DuPont and they're talking to each other. There's like, Klaus is doing this massive thing in the background, and you can tell that they clearly thought on the mixing desk that this is not great. So they just slowly dial it out. And you think, well, that just sounds pathetic, though, because there's this plastic orchestra screaming away in the background, and you're just fading it out like it's the end of the record. Yeah. No, I don't know. I think it was a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't hate it, but I thought, it didn't quite work, and at times incredibly cheesy when it gets into sort of Matrix sounding electronic. But yeah, I don't know. It was fine.
Yeah.
Coming to you live from the Movie Oubliette Theatre, it's the prestigious Mobley Awards.
Okay, Mobley Awards time, where we nominate our favourite ass-kicking, infinite bullet-whizzing, flipping parts of the film in a number of sense-offending categories.
Best quote.
I feel like there were a lot of lines that were supposed to be quite profound and thought-provoking. There is one when Preston is talking to Mary and she says, "Without love, breath is just a clock ticking."
Yes, I quite like that one. I thought that was a good one.
It's good. It's good, yeah.
But that's Emily Watson, I think. She's great.
Yeah.
My favourite quote was from Brand, actually.
Oh, yes.
And it's where earlier on in the film, when you think that he's just like this really keen Padawan apprentice, eager to learn from his master.
Yeah.
He says something about, he's really great, proud to be working with him because he thinks that, working with him will make his career. And then later in the movie, when he betrays him and turns him in, he says, "I told you I'd make my career with you, Preston."
Yes.
Yeah. It's a fun callback, and it's just shows you how you can make your career is through ambition and skullduggery.
Yeah.
Best hair or costume.
My favourite piece of hair and costume is the enforcer with the motorcycle helmet that has a segmented visor that, when closed, looks like a T for tetragrammaton.
Oh, yeah.
But then when you think about it, that means he's got a motorcycle helmet with a visor that's got a slit on it for his eyes, which kind of like, what's the point of a visor that doesn't cover your eyes when you're riding a motorbike?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It's stupid. Or his mouth. So basically all the bugs are going straight in there. But he looks cool. He looks really cool when it flips back. It's great.
That's the main thing. That's
the main thing is it looks cool. It doesn't matter if it makes any sense at all, as long as it looks cool.
Yeah, exactly.
How about you?
My favorite hair and costume. I mean, everyone wears monochrome throughout the entire film, but Preston, at one point, right at the end, he does wear a white sort of get-up. It almost looks Asian, the jackets, but it's all white, and he has a nice blue, sort of baby blue sash as well, which is
he does.
It's quite fetching.
Most naughty moment.
I do feel like the most naughtiest thing about this movie is everyone does martial arts.
Right.
In every fight scene, it's all martial arts, and that's 100% from The Matrix and onwards. And it's like 99 hit, and then suddenly everyone knew martial arts. No one did like fisticuff, like normal like punching anymore. It's always flying kicks and flips, and that's a very naughty's thing.
It is. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I hadn't even thought of that. I was more thinking about dystopian futures because that seemed to be big in the noughties.
Yes.
I'm not really sure why, but Spielberg's Minority Report, Aeon Flux, Children of Men, iRobot, The Island, just lots of authoritarian dictatorships that we had to overthrow for some reason.
That's true.
Favorite scene?
My favourite scene in this movie was Mary O'Brien's execution, which you said was akin to a witch burning, which I hadn't thought of. But I thought it was genuinely powerful, stirring stuff with Klaus Badelt's music and Emily's performance and Christian Bale's performance. Because, you said that he watched the video of him just calmly watching his wife being led away and killed and not recognizing the person that he was on this drug and rushing to try and stop her from being killed, and he doesn't make it. He's not able to stop it, and that's what brings about the third act. And I thought, it's nicely done, nicely executed, if you'll excuse the pun. I thought it was very good, and I wasn't expecting her to die, so I was really surprised.
It is really heart-wrenching, especially because you can see her face through the sort of little slit in the big door that comes down. So it's pretty sad.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
My favorite scene, I like the way it was shot, but the death scene of Partridge. So it's in a church. It's in this sort of big, I guess, abandoned church, and they've got all these light streams coming in through the background, and how Sean Bean holds up a book of Yeats, just like a book.
Yeah,
it's almost
W.B. Yeats.
similar to the scene in the Black Hole with the character holding up a book before he gets minced up by
that's true,
the robot. So, but execution style, Preston shoots him in the head, I think, and he falls back
through the book.
Through the book, yes, and then the pages kind of splatter everywhere. No blood though. But the whole scene is very John Woo-esque. Like it felt like, are we gonna see doves at some point? Like
I was wondering that. Are there some doves in those shafts of light?
Yeah. No, not quite.
Most cliche moment.
I thought the biggest cliche in this movie, and it's possibly a new one, is the snow globe of innocence.
Yes.
First seen in Citizen Kane, which apparently is the greatest movie of all time. But there are also snow globes in the Richard Gere thriller Unfaithful. And of course, we've seen it ourselves in One Magic Christmas, where it quite literally is used to show the shattering of innocence. Harry Dean Stanton drops it to explain to Abby that this something inside her mother has broken and he's got to fix it.
Right.
And in this movie, Christian Bale picks up a snow globe and then drops it when all of a sudden all of his illusions are shattered and he experiences feelings.
Yeah.
Listening to Beethoven.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it works. Yeah, it is a bit cheesy, isn't it?
It is, yeah. But it works. So if it works, why not?
My cliche I would like to point out is Bran's death scene. So he does get his face sliced in half. And I don't know what it is about the late 90s and early 2000s, but that slow sort of falling of a body part, a face, or like a sliced in half body was very common around at that time. So I think it happens in Blade, I'm not sure, but it definitely happens in Underworld. I'm pretty sure someone gets sliced in half diagonally and it just slides off them.
Yes, they do. You're right.
Resident Evil, it's the scene in the laser room where someone gets sliced in half or like in cubes and they just fall apart. And also in the movie Cube as well. There's, I think, another room with bladey things or whatever, someone gets sliced in half. But that sort of slice where you don't immediately notice that they've been sliced and then they just kind of slide away.
Yeah.
It was such a cliche of that sort of time of filmmaking.
Yeah, and I think it's because the VFX could do it at last. So everybody thought, hey, look at this thing we can do.
Yeah, exactly. It's never practical. It's always CGI.
Best special effect.
So my favorite special effect was slicing Bran's face off.
Right. Yes. Okay.
One detail I really liked about it was that if you look closely in the overhead shot that ends the scene as Preston walks out of the room, you can still see his face on the floor.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it looks like
back
in the day when you used to get sort of masks that you could cut out of the back of cereal boxes. It sort of looks like that.
Oh my God.
Like that. Just sitting on the floor, still looking kind of surprised, which I liked.
Wow. Okay, I did not notice that.
Yeah.
Favorite sound effect.
My favorite sound effect, it just kind of made me laugh, but it's the scene where Preston breaks one of the guy's arms. The bone like snaps in half. And it's not the bone break sound that I liked. It's the primal scream of excruciating pain coming from the guy when he gets his arm broken. It's amazing. It's just so like, yeah, that's how I would sound as well.
Well, yeah, no, not surprisingly, because I mean, there's a squib in there. His arm doesn't just break; it explodes.
Yeah.
It's really violent.
Yeah,
more so than had ever been depicted before with a bone break. I think.
And I think the director mentions that the guy that played the guy getting the bone break was an amputee, so he doesn't have an actual arm there. So it's just like a prosthetic that's being snapped in half. So it's it works though. It really makes that scene convincing.
It does.
Sound for you?
For me, I just have a stupidest sound effect, and it's just because I became really sensitized to it, and it was during Preston's final fight with DuPont. The sort of swiping noises for the gun Carter or whatever the hell it is. Yeah, there were just so many.
Yes. Yeah.
And I started, once you hear it, all of a sudden, I'm just thinking, God, what did they have, like a sampling keyboard and they're just ramming their fingers against it to play thousands of different swooshes? Ugh.
Yeah.
Most funniest moment.
So this movie has one joke in it. I think it's a deliberate joke. After dispatching a whole squad of police who have discovered his dog, John bends out of the shot and stands back up with a puppy in his arms. And with this really sort of stern blue steel look on his face throughout. And it's clearly meant to be funny because he's all seriousness and cheekbones and there's this puppy in his arms. So it's funny. It's clearly meant to be funny. And the director said that it wasn't in the cut originally and then he put it back in because the audience loves it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
There is just something about this sort of man of action and a cute dog that I think obviously John Wicks had great fun with that as a premise as well.
Yeah.
But it's very funny. I laughed a lot.
I actually laughed a lot at the first dog scene as well. I mean, not the shooting of the dogs, obviously, but the scene, the scene where Preston picks up the puppy and he says, it needs to be checked for diseases. And he kind of walks off and then he comes back and he says something else. That was really funny. Like, it felt like, is this a comedy suddenly? Because he's so stern and emotionless every other time.
He is, yeah. I think that's one of the ways that you humanize your character or make the audience buy into your central character is have them rescue a dog.
Yes.
Or be nice to children. And we haven't seen him do anything nice to his children.
No.
Other than police their intake of prosium.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see him fall in love with a dog on sight. Yeah.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah. All right. And that's our movies.
That's our movies.
Hi, this is Jonathan King, and you're listening to Movie Oubliette.
Right, it's final verdict time. Should Equilibrium from 2002 be liberated to share its feelings with the rest of the world once more and be praised, or should it be injected with prosium and be returned back to its emotionless abyss of the oubliette? Lost forever, Conrad. Equilibrium. I do have an inkling that maybe you didn't like this movie.
No, I didn't like this movie. But, I mean, I can appreciate it. I think the look of the movie, the production value they got from shooting in former East Berlin and East Germany, it looks great. All of the work that they did on the fight scenes. But the central premise of it just doesn't work. You can't have a drama about people that don't feel anything. And the idea of a society that bans emotion on the basis that it causes wars is risible. So, I mean, you have to take it on the value of being a fantasy and just entertainment for the sake of it. But I couldn't take any of it seriously. I was just laughing at the whole ridiculousness of it, apart from a couple of scenes that I thought were quite moving, like the execution of Mary's character. But it's never going to appeal to me. And so if I just put that aside and say, okay, would I recommend it as a piece of filmmaking? No.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. No.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm not surprised by that. I think I might be swayed a little bit by nostalgia of that time. I mean, when I watched it, I think I was like 19 or 20. It's very much of my generation. It's so stylistic and Matrix-esque, and I loved movies like that back then. Watching it now, it's very dated and quite silly. And kind of quite obviously low budget in scenes. Like, it has kind of a flatness to it in a lot of the scenes, even though it's really well shot and they did get a lot of production value from very minimal budget and sort of resources. It's innovative in terms of filmmaking. Yeah, I don't know. I know it's flawed. I know it's silly. I know the premise is outrageous, but I kind of still like it. It's interesting as well watching Christian Bale in a movie like this, because I feel like he would never do a movie like this now.
No.
But yeah, he's in this. So I don't know. I think it's quite a sort of snapshot of the times, and still it's almost like a guilty pleasure. I don't know. I'd recommend this. Not to everyone. Maybe only people that grew up in the 2000s.
But do you think it's like a good representation? Like a really, like, oh, this is a hidden gem that was overlooked at the time. This is a good piece of Naughty's action.
I think so. I don't know. I think Naughty's action movies are silly and ridiculous. I think they all are. Like, all of Jason Statham's Transporter movies are stupid, but they're still fun. I don't know. I still had fun with this movie.
Okay. Well, I'm glad. I mean, I did not, but that's fine. To break this impasse, we ought to find out from our patrons what they thought. Ooh. Hello, Hal.
Yes, Conrad.
What have you been doing?
I've been working as a customer service chatbot for a delivery company.
How did that go?
The swearing is fun.
Okay.
Oh, lovely. Okay. Can we have the vote, please?
Holy shit. They voted to set it free.
I am shocked by this. Wow, I really thought I was going to be alone. I really thought, is this movie that bad that I like it? But apparently not.
No, apparently not. So it wasn't unanimous. It was 80-20.
Oh, yes.
Eddie Coulter said, it's been almost 15 years since I've seen Equilibrium. Still found it pretty entertaining with good performances from Christian Bale and Sean Bean. There's enough here that it should gun-tartar itself out of the oubliette. Film aficionado who chose this movie
yes.
said, back in college, Equilibrium was the local video rental store's answer to my question, man, those Matrix sequels sure sucked. What else do you have? After rewatching the movie, I'm happy to report that the frenetic action, solid performances, and overall Orwellian tone still hold up well. Sure, the gun tartar concept is a bit silly, and it criminally underutilizes Sean Bean. But the pros outweigh the cons. I say let Equilibrium backflip out of the oubliette to electronic music whilst dual-wielding pistols.
Yes.
But there was a flip side, and of course that was Jasmine.
Of course.
Please toss this one back. An amalgamation, read rip-off, of Fahrenheit 451, The Matrix and Ultraviolet seems like it could have been interesting, but since the movie induces in its viewers as much emotion as its deadpan characters, this is an unintentionally funny bore.
Right.
And Jasmine was afraid that she was going to be the lone dissenting voice, so Isaac, bless him, came to her rescue and said,
Oh, yes.
it's movies like Equilibrium that really make me question the nature of the oubliette. Because, look, I want the dope image of Christian Bale illuminated only by gunfire to live on forever, but I really think this movie was forgotten for a reason. It tries so hard to convince you how serious and deep it all is, but the aesthetics are mega campy, and it never really reaches the gravitas it tries to project. Like, I can tell they want me to be moved by the puppy scene, but it's too much. Almost as if the movie itself is waiting for the story to get it over with. Let's whiz past all this Orwell stuff so we can get back to the bang-bang fights already. So where do I go from here? Set it free on the basis that I like the vibes because the concept and shot composition are fun? Or send it back because I think the execution is overall lacking and that I wouldn't recommend it to anyone? I guess this time I'll go with the latter, if only so that Jasmine doesn't have to stand alone. Well done, Isaac. Very noble.
Very nice. But yes, they have voted. Let's set it free.
Yes. Bye-bye, Equilibrium.
Goodbye. Okay, Conrad, what film are we doing next episode?
Well, as you pointed out in our last episode, we've done a lot of British movies this year, so I thought it would be only fair to go down under next time. So we will be looking at the 1978 Australian psychological thriller, Long Weekend.
Oh, I never heard of this movie.
No, me neither. It was recommended by the person who'll be joining us to discuss it.
Okay. Ooh, right. Well, always happy to check out Australian film.
Yeah, and something from the 70s too. Feels like we haven't done that in a while.
And listeners, if you want to keep up to date, find out when our episodes come out, you can follow us on all our social media platforms as Movie Oubliette and email us at movie.oubliette@gmail.com.
And if you want to support the show and keep the lights on, head on over to Patreon, where for as little as $1 you can nominate films for future episodes, like Film Aficionado did.
Yeah.
With this one.
I enjoyed that nomination, even though not everyone did.
Yeah, for $5 you get access to our exclusive monthly minisodes, and for $10 you can be an executive producer like Chisilla, Eddie Coulter, Isaac Sutton, Dr. Doggy, Serge Iconographer, and Ryan A. Potter.
Yes. Thank you for all the support, everyone. We also have merchandise at Redbubble and a YouTube channel, and if you have not already, given us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast platform you are listening to us on, please do. It does help us out a lot, and it costs you absolutely nothing.
Yes, and apparently if you use ridiculous superlatives, it really spikes the algorithm and it promotes your show, gets it to the front page.
Cool.
So use the most ridiculous praise that you can come up with.
Yes, please do. Please do. All right, Conrad, that's it for another episode. Until next time, goodbye.
Goodbye. Don't sense offend.
We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie Oubliette.
Be careful, Preston. You're treading on my dreams.